Alright, I never thought this would happen, but I'm going to be honest with y'all. I have a serious problem. It's been, as of writing this, a couple of weeks since I finished the Sword Art Online series. The nightmare had ended, I was finally at peace. But turns out I have some serious withdrawal symptoms ever since. Not that they are amazing games or anything, so it's not because I'm missing a certain degree of quality, but they are a strange type of fun I sometimes enjoy. But with no Sword Art Online games to play, I have nothing to do, I guess. I have nothing to fill that hole with. Or is there? I remembered a comment that was placed under my review of Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet that dropped the name Freedom Wars. Now, I have never heard of it before this comment, and when I searched it, I found out that it was made by the exact same developers as Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet, and it contained similar content. Which is great, because I love the combat of Fatal Bullet, and for Sword Art Online terms, it had probably one of, if not the best story. So what am I waiting for? Let's get into it! Was my initial reaction when finding out this information. But it turns out that Freedom Wars was originally released for the PSVita. Now, what is a PSVita? Good question, because nobody ever bought one. Simply put, the PSVita is a very disappointing sequel of a handheld console that came after the PSP. Now, thankfully, I don't need to get a PSVita, as obviously by the title of the review, Freedom Wars got a remastered that got released on the PC. And it's fair to say that I was pretty excited to dive in, and of course, tell you all about it. So, without further ado, let's dive in and see what Freedom Wars Remastered has to offer. Please be like Fatal Bullet, please be like Fatal Bullet, please be like Fatal Bullet. Freedom Wars takes place in the far, far future on Earth. The planet itself went to absolute ruination over these many decades through conflicts. With now most people dead and resources limited, the remnant of humanity fled underground, living in these huge cities called panopticons. There are multiple of these spread across the country of Japan and all have the same purpose: survival. Each inhabitant of a panopticon is required to make a considerable contribution towards the state, and in turn, it protects them. However, dire situations require dire solutions, so most panopticons depend on a specific group of people, the sinners. These people are sentenced for ridiculous amounts of years to prison for what could be considered very silly reasons. But if they are willing to work and contribute to the panopticon, they can lower that sentence and even gain back their freedom. And you are one of these sinners aiming to do exactly that. Though during one of your missions you got heavily injured and lost your memory. Which is very bad for you, of course, but not as bad as for the panopticon. They just lost a good asset because you decided to lose your memory. And as all reasonable states in the apocalypse would do, they handed you a 1 million year sentence to jail and push your rank back to square one. Cause how dare you wasting the panopticon's resources by losing your memory? Now back at the bottom, you are again going to try and build up your life and status in the panopticon. Complete missions, lower your sentence, and of course find new comrades and maybe even your freedom in the end. As you're trying to scrape your life back together in the dirt, the cogs of destiny are turning. You are visited by an unknown figure that gives you vague directions and predictions for the future. And as you follow those directions and predictions, you slowly start to uncover a mystery that is kept very deep in the panopticon itself, that can very well change the world if uncovered. Freedom War story is a little bit stereotypical for an apocalypse setting, but it kicks off very well with a very good cutscene setting up the story and the setting. It's short and sweet, but it's also what it remains for the rest of the story. As I progressed, the development of the story felt very lackluster, despite its attempt to working towards something. Plot twists, reveals, or just simple exploration, it truly tried everything. But there was barely any build-up or foundation on which they were based on, leading to reveals and conclusions that didn't land as well or didn't land at all. Especially the ending suffered by this, because it suddenly just happened, and during the credits I said out loud, "Oh, that's it I guess," but what just actually happened. Same goes for the characters and the comrades you meet throughout the story. At the start they really seem to not just be part of your story, but also grow alongside you. Only to slowly then fade into the background as your character is pushed into somewhat of a hero role, which felt a bit off-putting considering the game's setting. The game truly just had to stop for a moment and spend a good minute or two developing things further. But instead it presents things at light speed, and even there it felt still lackluster. Like it doesn't want you to ask questions or want you to have detailed information. That you should not spend time in reading up on lore or something. Even though there is a lot to explore, not just the world but the characters themselves as well. Because your comrades in arms, you can lose characters in your missions, which should lead to interesting situations for a group of sinners that you slowly surround yourself with. All sinners have a prison sentence, but none really speak about why or how they got it. Which is a shame, as it takes away a lot of background and potential future building for these characters. I just wish I could have talked and interact with them more. Have special companion missions or something where we get to explore who they really are. And on top of that, you have the world exploration itself, of course. The world has gone to so much shit that there's a lot of lost history around you. And I wish I could explore that to a certain degree. Or even just have some kind of mystery or like myth built around it, because there has so much time spent underground and away from what once was. The game really had a good start and a lot of potential, but it dropped the ball on the story and characters as you progress, which is a shame. At the start of the game, I was really excited and wanted to explore everything if possible. And I saw a lot of things that could be explored, but in the end, I guess the game took itself a little bit too serious in the terms of its setting. You are a prisoner in the end. Don't ask questions, just do what you're told. Though I will be fair, the dedication of presenting the setting itself and how it was used to implement game mechanics was very interesting, and more importantly, done very well, and even made up to a certain degree for the later fall off the story has. As mentioned, you are a sinner and live, fight and survive to lower your sentence slightly, hoping to obtain what seems almost impossible, your freedom. Now, that is your point of view, because if you have to believe the state that runs your panopticon, the story is quite different. You live, fight and survive to contribute to the happiness and safety of the panopticon willingly, out of your goodwill, your loyalty and love for the panopticon and its citizens. Which is of course completely false, but don't you dare say that, because the rules state that those are your motivations to fight, and if the rules state that it is that, then there is no other truth. Every word spoken against it will lead to a sentence extension, because how dare you waste panopticon resources and time to spread lies. This joking, almost parody attitude towards this insane dictator state where sentences are thrown your way left and right for the most silly reasons is absolutely brilliant. And it translated perfectly into game mechanics that truly made this world very immersive and to a degree very funny. At the start you are the lowest level of sinner and the game tells you what you are permitted to do, which is basically nothing. Leave your cell? Forget about it. Walking steps in your cell? Not happening. Lay down to sleep? What? Do you think your cell is a hotel room or something? Here, have your sentence being extended a little bit more, and of course, you will have to accept this extension on your own free will, because that is what a good sinner does. To be permitted to do more things, you actually have to lower your sentence via missions and contributions. This earns you contribution points, which allows you to buy more permits and to rank up as a sinner, so you get a more comfortable life in your cell, or even are allowed to go outside. Though, don't get too ambitious, resources are scarce and will not be spent on the likes of you to improve heavily on your state of life. Instead of a cell where rusted metal plates are all over the floor, you get one with less rust on them. Of course, the cell update is not as interesting as being able to go outside of your cell, and there is also some fun to be found. You get to explore the panopticon a little bit, but don't you dare sprint through the hallways without the right permits. Again, I find that to be extremely funny. and also an absolute brilliant way to implement game mechanics via the setting itself. Things that you are told in the game hold actual merit and consequences when playing and interacting with the world. Yet it's so simple, like the before mentioned running permit or laying down to sleep. And when you break these rules, it's usually followed up with dialogue that mentions wasting resources or not accepting the love you feel for the panopticon. Now, in late game, it definitely would be annoying to be interrupted constantly by sentence extensions. A joke will lose its quality over time. But thankfully, this aspect doesn't overstay its welcome throughout the playthrough. As you progress, this slowly fades into the background, which is also a sign of progression, as each rank you go up allows you to do more basic things without a problem, which again is a really nice idea of how to design your game and also complement the setting at the same time. Now, the combat is the aspect that got me to this game, and well, it was what I expected, and even a little bit more. It's very similar to Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet, but feels more expanded on, even though Fatal Bullet was released 4 years after Freedom Wars. It's a third-person shooter combined with a hack and slash where mobility plays a larger role in. The levels themselves are missions in a small map where you are tasked to fight sinners from other panopticons, save citizens and control territory. Each mission you gain resources, upgrades and weapons which you can use to upgrade your character or donate to the panopticon to lower your sentence and gain contribution points. Once you make your decision on what to keep and what to donate, you upgrade your weapons, prepare yourself, and get back in the field. This is basically how every mission is designed, be that side operations or main quests. It's overall a very straightforward combat system that creates a similar rotation in missions and upgrading that can be found in other games like Monster Hunter or God Eater. The combat has a couple of gimmicks that tries to spice up the combat. Most noticeable ones are the grappling hook and the abductors. The grapple hook, or as it's called here, thorns, gives you mobility that becomes very handy in combat, especially for melee, as you can easily target your enemies close the distance and effectively strike them down. The grapple hook also becomes in handy when facing the abductors. These abductors are large beings that, as the name suggests, abduct people and are a daunting enemy to beat, as they can be loaded with all sorts of weaponry. Taking them down probably introduces my favorite aspect of this combat system. When facing one, you can use the grapple hook and certain weapons to sever certain body parts of the enemy. Let's say one of the abductors has a very annoying rocket launcher. You just gotta pull yourself towards it, sever it, and there you go, dealt loads of damage to it, and made the enemy exponentially weaker. The more parts you remove, the weaker the abductor becomes, falling easier into a weakened state and takes more damage. Of course, the abductor does everything to shake you off, so timing when to let go is key. If jumping on them and cutting off their body parts is a little bit too close for your taste, you can opt to use the thorn to perform drag moves. As the name suggests, you drag down the abductor after some rapid button presses, which leaves it in a weakened state and opens up for a lot of damage. And if even that is too close for your comfort, then you can choose to just shoot the enemy from a distance, though be sure to manage your ammo correctly. However, no matter what combat style you pick, they all suffer from the same little flaws and lack of polish. These are not game breaking in my opinion, they just get annoying at times. First one is that the combat can feel very sluggish and clunky. Fast rapid changes to respond to enemies is not possible. Once you start an attack, you are stuck in it until it's completed. So, in other words, you gotta tank some hits here and there that you saw coming but couldn't dodge because you were still in your swinging sword animation. This particularly gets annoying when you face multiple enemies at the same time. Because when you get hit once, you get stun locked, and when multiple enemies attack you, it can result in a stun lock match where you constantly can't move until everyone gets their hit in or you die. Another big annoyance is when trying to sever a body part, the prompt to do so not always pops up when it should, leading me to waste some consumable items from time to time. The next one might just be a little bit of a skill issue on my end, but I sometimes struggled with the targeting system. At times it can be very difficult to switch between body parts of an abductor or switch targets altogether. Also, every time you get hit when trying to sever a body part, the lock-on gets cancelled, which feels like a slap in the face after finally being able to lock onto it, only to see it disappear. But again, that's not game-breaking, it's just annoying and causes occasionally cursing here and there. Thankfully, your teammates aren't useless here, so in these moments of struggle, they kinda make up for it. You can even give them commands to do certain things or take on certain roles in combat. However, I noticed that they don't need to be commanded, as they basically do what must be done by default. Heck, in some moments, they just carried me through the entire level because they heat-seek enemies that I couldn't even see. They also serve as the perfect healer and revivers, because again, when you get hit by an attack you couldn't dodge out of clunkiness of the combat system, they easily just pick you up so that you can continue your battle. The biggest problem I have with the combat system is a very unfortunate one, and that is that it's not good enough in my opinion to carry the entire game once the story is concluded. Obviously, the endgame goal is to keep fighting, contributing to your panopticon, joining in on multiplayer fights, to complete very difficult missions, all for one single purpose, and that is to get your sentence to 0. The game will roughly leave you at the 800,000 year mark, which doesn't take long to get there, but grinding it completely away to 0 through the combat system alone just didn't look that appealing to me. I enjoyed the story enough to keep me invested. I loved the setting and how it was implemented through the gameplay aspects, but at the end of the game, those things disappear, leaving the combat all by itself to carry everything else, which it just can't in my opinion. Still, while Freedom Wars Remastered was a short experience, it was damn sweet. I really liked my time with it. The story is very intriguing at the start, and therefore it's a shame that it later falls off, concluding it in a way that felt rushed and unsatisfying to say the least. I did love the characters and the few moments we shared with them, but I wished we had a lot more time with them. Now the setting, that is just amazing. It's apocalyptic, it's depressing, dark, yet also funny, a parody that is implemented in a very nice way with game mechanics. Like for example with the permits and the writing around the rules of the sentencing. And thankfully it did not overstay its welcome and knew exactly when to stop making jokes. All in all, I really loved the setting, absolutely enjoyed it, and it was something that I wished more games would do to present their setting. Now the combat is the aspect that drawn me to this game, and I'm happy to say that's fine. It's truly a fine combat system. It does the trick and at times feel very cool and satisfying. Again, the way you can dismantle abductors piece by piece was really something I enjoy, and I kept doing it for the entirety of the game. However, it has its clunky, stiff moments that you can't escape, and it lacks an overall polish that you should actually expect to be present here in a remaster. The combat missions can be done in multiplayer, and there is an overarching competition online between all the panopticons. However, I did not feel like dabbling into that too much. I rather focused on the story and the setting, as those, especially the latter one, were much more interesting to me. However, that meant that after 15 hours of story, the game slowly came to an end for me, as again, the combat is not good enough to carry itself for hours on end. Now, I will definitely recommend checking this game out if you are interested by what I told and showed here in this review, or even if you enjoy games like God Eater or Monster Hunter. It's a good, fun, sweet but short experience. However, while I do commend them for having a €40 price tag in today's game industry, a part of me would argue that around 20 to 30 euros would be the sweet spot for this game in terms of price. So yeah, put it on your wish list, and when it gets a discount, I say go for it.